All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about something pretty fascinating, the huge and kind of surprising boom in online betting in Uzbekistan. Now, you could go and read the top 10, 20 articles on Google, but who's got time for that? We've done all the heavy lifting for you, digging through the best sources out there, especially the super detailed guides from betplace.us, to bring you everything you need to know. Okay, let's kick things off with a big number. By 2028, the online sports betting market in Uzbekistan is expected to hit $1 million. Now, I know what you're thinking, $1 million? On a global scale, maybe that's not a headline grabber. But for a market with this kind of complicated legal background, that number points to a massive, growing wave of interest that you just can't ignore. But of course, there's a pretty big catch here. The whole legal situation is, well, let's just call it tricky. So the real question for anyone interested is pretty simple. In this booming but confusing market, where do you even start, and how do you do it safely? That's what we're going to figure out today. So first things first, just how big is this boom we're talking about? Let's look at the numbers, because they tell a story of a market that isn't just growing, it's taking off like a rocket. You've got steady annual growth of over 5%, which is solid. But here's the real kicker. The number one most popular betting site in the country is pulling in over 6 million visitors. Think about that. That is not just a few people poking around. That's a huge, dedicated user base that's already here and active. And what are all these people betting on? It's football. And honestly, it's not even a competition. The beautiful game completely runs the show, making up more than 80% of the entire betting market. Sure, other sports like basketball and tennis are popular, but in Uzbekistan, football is absolutely king. Okay, so with all this action going on, you're probably wondering, wait, how is any of this actually legal? And that's a great question. This is where things get a little complicated, and you really have to understand let's call them rules of the game. So a little history lesson helps here. Back in 2002, a pretty wide sweeping ban on most gambling was put in place. Then, in 2007, the Ministry of Finance stepped in to take control. But the date you really want to pay attention to is 2025. That's when a new 4% turnover tax is supposed to come into play, and that could signal a really big shift in how things are done. And this all leads to this really interesting situation. On one hand, the official government stance is that most gambling is banned, except for things like state-run lotteries. But then you have the reality on the ground, where tons of international betting sites are easy to access and are being used by more and more people every day. Which, of course, brings us to the most important part for you. If people are betting, where are they going? Let's get into the top platforms out there, based on the fantastic, in-depth research from our friends over at betplace.us. But before we name names, how do you even decide what's best? Well, the analysis from betplace.us used a really smart checklist. They looked at the stuff that actually matters to you. Is the site easy to use? Is it safe and secure? Can you bet on lots of different things? Are the bonuses any good? And, is there someone to help you if something goes wrong? And here's the list. It's full of names you'll probably recognize. Bet365 is sitting right at the top with a killer 4.8 rating, mostly because it has a ton of markets and a super smooth app. You also have other big players like Unibet and William Hill right up there. Now, we don't have time to go through all 10 right now, but don't worry, we've got the full detailed breakdown from betplace.us linked for you right in the description below. Now let's zero in on 3 sites that are really making waves in Uzbekistan: MostBet, Melbet, and OneWin. The fight for new users is intense, especially when you look at the welcome bonuses. I mean, Melbet and OneWin are both offering an insane 500% bonus. Plus, they all have a huge menu of sports and daily events, so you're never short on options. And out of those, our source betplace.us really puts a spotlight on Melbet, calling it a trusted leader in the space. And you can see why. It offers a massive selection. We're talking over 32 different sports and more than 1,000 events to bet on every single day. That kind of variety, plus a solid reputation, makes it a real standout choice. Okay, so you know the top-rated sites. Awesome. But picking a site is really only the first step. Now let's talk about the important stuff, how to play smart and stay safe. First up, money. How do you get it in and out? Well, if speed and security are your top priorities, e-wallets and crypto are your best friends. Transactions are pretty much instant. Your good old credit and debit cards work just fine too. Just know that getting your winnings out might take a couple of days. It really just comes down to what you're most comfortable with. And please, this next part is so important. A safe betting experience really just boils down to 4 common sense steps. 1. Always make sure the site has a real license. 2. Check out user reviews to see what other people are saying. 3, and this is a big one, set your spending limits before you even start. And 4, know the signs of problem gambling and know where to get help if you ever need it. So, we've got a booming market in a legal gray area. We know where people are playing and how to stay safe. But what happens next? Let's take a quick look at what's on the horizon for betting in Uzbekistan. There are really 3 big trends to watch. First, new tech, like live dealer games, is making everything feel way more real and immersive. Second, things like AI and blockchain are being used to make sites way more secure. And third, the big one, is the constant possibility of new regulations that could finally clear things up and completely change the game.
At the end of the day, the single biggest piece of advice from all the sources we looked at is really simple, but really important. As this exciting market keeps getting bigger, the #1 rule for bettors is to play with care and to play responsibly. Which leaves us with one final, massive question. With so many people already on board and the real possibility of new laws coming soon, could Uzbekistan be about to become the next major hotspot on the global betting map? It's gonna be fascinating to watch. And hey, if you want that complete top 10 list and a really deep dive into each site, the full guide from betplace.us is the very first link waiting for you in the description. You'll find a bunch of other great resources there too. Thanks for tuning in.